I've always heard growing up, your actions always create who you're going to be and what do you want to be. And I think, internally I wanted to.
I thought you were going to go with what do you want to be when you grow up?
No, no, no.
My bad. Back to serious.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for takeoff. You are now flying high with Travis Lamance.
What's happening, Flying High? Welcome to another Flight Deck episode. We're going to recap the awesome conversation we had with Mr. Omar Elattar. That was a super fun episode. Went down and did that one with him in Miami, and we all had a good time. It was fun. I want to catch up on that one. But as we're recording today, we're sitting in the FBO here in Amarillo, and you can see it looks a little sparse around here. The winter weather has moved in and canceled a bunch of flights and got a bunch of stuff shut down. So I was supposed to fly out on a commercial airline on Sunday, and they preemptively canceled that one already. We've got some aircraft parked up in New York and a couple other places, and everybody basically countrywide is getting hit in this right now. So that is the one thing that we fight with a lot in the aviation space is the weather. You know, we can't control the weather, and it's one of the things that actually catches people off guard in the private aviation world, and trying to plan your schedule around weather events and how to deal with icing issues and dirty runways and all the things that go along with it. It makes it a little unpleasant when everything you're planning on and working on and just spent a decent chunk of change to get a trip planned and moved, and it's just is what it is, as they say. So we got to keep safety number one. You'll thank us later if we get you there a day late instead of never, if you push those boundaries, you know. So you got to respect Mother Nature when it comes to flying, and you get up at altitude, the weather's even worse a lot of times, and you pick up some really heavy icing. And all these aircraft that we operate are all made to fly in. They call it a FIKI airplane. Flight into known icing is what they're certified for, just like an airliner would be. But you still only want to push that so far. And so, yeah, we are making lemonade out of lemons here and taking the opportunity to catch up on some flight deck conversations and watching the snow blow. And it's very pretty outside. So with that being said, Mr. Dub, what do you think we ought to cover on Omar's episode? What were some things that struck you on that one?
Man, several things. That's really my favorite episode so far. I felt like the conversation was really compelling. A lot of just nuggets of wisdom dropped along the way. And my favorite title as well of all the episodes so far, from getting high to flying high. That's Omar's story, man. It was great. And I wish we were in Miami right now, actually.
Might be a little better weather.
A little better, yeah. So one of my favorite questions that you asked him was, what's a question that you ask that changes people? Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, I want to hear what Travis's questions are. What do you have locked and loaded for people that, you know, pulls an activating trigger on their lives or causes them to shift?
Yeah, it's usually depending on the person that you're dealing with and how well you know their background, you know. But it's almost always a mirror question or a reflective question of then versus now. It's real easy to get hectic and busy in your day-to-day life, and your life is just your life, you know, and you forget things that happened a long time ago and why you're doing what you're doing to work so hard to get the things you're getting. So it's a lot of times you ask a memory triggering question that makes them go back to way back when, and you can almost just see it on their face. They kind of go into la la land, and they're kind of reliving that situation in their head. And it's a little bit situational, but it's along those lines of kind of a recall question from something a long time ago that helps them in the moment bridge that gap from, I remember this point of desperation or pain I was in, and to this situation I'm in now. Why did I make this decision instead of this decision? And am I glad I made that decision versus that decision? So yeah, I think that's the place I like, and I don't even know if it's the best way to do it. It's just the one I like watching the most of, watching them kind of relive that transition in the moment.
Yeah, very cool. So I have a question for you, my friend. Have you ever been asked a question in your past that changed everything?
I think, I've always heard growing up, your actions always create who you're going to be and what do you want to be. And I think, internally I wanted to.
I thought you were going to go with what do you want to be when you grow up?
No.
My bad. Back to seriousness.
No, it was more just like of an internal conflict of, every choice leads to where you're going to end up in life, and then so I just kind of chose that path to try to be more than, I could be. And then I kind of surprised myself a little bit, if that makes sense. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you really are. And you kind of get that ball rolling. Now it's a challenge with myself, like I've already, 10 years ago, I would have never thought I'd be where I am in the industry now, or,
Top
know the
40 under
knowledge.
40.
Yeah, exactly. Or know what I know today, or, still in the track to keep going. So I guess I kind of surprised myself, and now it's kind of a challenge internally. Like, where can I get? Like,
Yeah.
See how far we can push this.
yeah.
And then a question that you asked Omar was, what was the lie that he had to overcome in his mindset that was a limiting belief system in order for him to have the breakout success that he's experienced? And so, what about you, man? What have been some lies that you've recognized that you had to disagree with and overcome?
Yeah,
or replace, really, I guess.
Yeah, you replace them with other things because we all have an internal story we're telling ourselves, right? And with the internal dialogue that we all have going on all the time, it's just a matter of reprogramming that to taking it from a lack or a loss mindset to a abundance mindset. And there's not finite resources of anything. There's always a way to get something done. And, I grew up with a lot of those self-limiting beliefs. Well, I'm only this, or I'm just that. And it takes a long time of working through those things to be like, I'm just as good as anybody else. Why not me do that? Or if I have a desire in me to go do that, why wouldn't I go do that? Or why can't I go do that? It's just replacing all the negatives with the positives, and just keeping yourself above the line on staying positive in your mindset. And it's real easy to get into like this frou-frou mindset, manifestation language and all that. And I'm not so much into directly that, but I am a very big believer in, if you're a negative person, you're going to get negative outcomes. And if you're a positive person, you're going to get overwhelmingly positive outcomes.
Yep.
And you can go down the road of all the philosophical beliefs, why that is or whatever, but you can also just go back to the scientific evidence of your reticular activator system on it, where you don't ever notice any red cars driving around, but then you buy a red car, now all of a sudden everybody has a red car. It's just what you're focused on.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with positive and negative. If you're focused on winning and success, then you're going to win and you're going to be successful. And if you focus on, well, shit, I can't because of this, or I can't because of that, if you say you can, you're right, and if you say you can't, you're right. So
yeah, that's good. What's kind of your practical steps once you identify, okay, this is a mindset or belief that does not serve me well.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be replaced with this truth. What is your practical way of stepping through that or walking that out in such a way that it really does become replaced?
Step number one is closing yourself off from all the negative people. When you first start going through this,
I'm going to have to ask you to wait in the car. Nah, you're hella positive, bro.
Whenever you first start going through this and you start picking up on little hints of it, I think you'll notice that a lot of the people in your sphere of influence or your circle, your close-knit group, you're probably going to notice a lot of them are really negative. And so the first challenge is being able to shut that off, either literally not being around them or just training yourself to not listen to their input. But if you're surrounded by all that negativity and that negative input, it's really hard to climb out of it, because that's the feedback loop you're hearing from the outside world, is that negativity. So I think closing that off first, and then going out and finding good resources, different books, different educational pieces, follow different people on social media. Like, it's funny, if you go and scroll through someone else's social media, pretty quick you're going to figure out where they're at in their headspace, because it's the algorithms pick up on what people are attracted to, right? So you pick up someone's social media and start scrolling through it, and it's negative this and doom and gloom that and oh crap this, and where their head's at. And like, you pick up mine and go through it, it's all about business and success and winning. And so I think that's a good indicator, kind of pulse check for yourself. Look at your feed objectively and say, is this overwhelmingly positive stuff I'm seeing on social, or overwhelmingly negative stuff I'm seeing on social? And the way their algorithms work to push content to you, they want to keep you on that device as long as they can. That's their job.
Right.
And so they do that by feeding you what you're attracted to. So if you go and scroll it, and to me, it's just a good low-level litmus test on where your headspace is at. If you're asking yourself, well, I don't know if I am or if I'm not, it's just how I am. Just do that little self-test, and if it is that way, then go and start finding some good content. Personally, I think the book Think and Grow Rich is like one of the greatest places to start, even if you don't care about making monetary wealth. If you just want a wealthy life,
Right.
it's a good place to start to get your head going in the right direction.
It's so interesting how much influence audio has on us. I won't get like all weird and deep into it and stuff, but when you start to look at like quantum mechanics and neuroplasticity and how things respond to sound, I think we've all been at a point probably where we've realized like, man, why is my self-talk so negative? Like I would never talk to my friend the way I'll trash myself, if I mess something up or miss a deadline or whatever, And it's like, once you become aware of, man, I really need to be intentional about how I'm speaking to myself internally. And one of the ways that I discovered to really shift my internal perspective is even when I don't feel like it, even if I haven't produced evidence yet in my life of an adjustment, I'm going to begin to speak it out intentionally. And then I don't even know how I figured this out, but I just realized, like, if you said your name isn't Dub, I would either laugh at you or I would ignore you. Those would be my two responses because I know I'm congruent with that truth.
Yeah.
And so once I identify that, okay, here's a limiting belief system or a negative mindset or whatever, something that needs to be replaced. Here's the truth I want to replace it with. Then, man, I'll just put it on the calendar for a few days. Man, whenever I have a free minute, I'm just going to audibly speak that truth out. And then I'll just imagine it being challenged. And if I'm going to laugh or just ignore it, then I know I've hit congruence with it. But if, I imagine it being challenged and my emotional response is, yeah, that's not true, or here's the thing that proves that's not true, then I know, man, I haven't become congruent with that yet. But I've just found that's a real practical way to shift my internal mode to match what it is that I've observed externally needs to be shifted.
There's one thing we haven't really covered on the podcast. This is a good lead into it, is that you spend a lot of time doing like personal development coaching and personal alignment. Like one of your main jobs is teaching people how to quit being negative and start being positive. So I think we have the question backwards here with you asking me that, because you're one of the coaches I use to get my own shit that way. So
I was hoping to just get an extra key from you. I was going to put in my tool belt, man.
No, a lot of what I do with it is stuff I've learned from you over the years, from your expertise in that arena. And so I don't know, we can chase that rabbit trail or do that later, but you're a wealth of knowledge on that personal development, personal alignment stuff, with the combination of disc testing and what you just mentioned about kind of becoming congruent with who you're supposed to be. And, a lot of people feel like this gut feeling that they're supposed to be more, they're supposed to do more, but then they let all the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt stop them from moving forward with it. And a lot of the work that you've done with people, you just watch a change in people where they get rid of all that fear and uncertainty by doing stuff like this. And it's self-included. When I first started hearing about this kind of thing, it's like, ooh, that's all woo-woo. Like, it's real easy not to get into this weird lane where you feel like it's all this weird stuff. But if you actually take the time to learn it and understand the reasons that it works and how it works, it's amazingly transformational.
It's crazy. Yeah. The amount of transformation that's available once you become aware of things that need to be changed and the truth that it can be changed. Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. I always love like breakout stories like Omar's.
Yeah.
Dude, he was depressed, high in his car, but man, he just had that internal drive and a crazy harebrained idea.
Yeah.
And the wherewithal I love that saying you always use of build the parachute on the way down.
Yeah.
And man, that shift that's a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
But it took that mindset shift and that willingness to take the risk. It's pretty awesome for sure.
Not very many people do that without an outside resource. So that's one thing that I would say is, it's easy for us to get on camera and talk to the audience and talk about how I did this, I did that. It's pretty freaking rare that somebody does it in a silo. Like on Omar's story, it sounded like it was pretty siloed. Like he was just one of the breakout cases where he just did it on his own. Yeah. But like for my story, if you would have known me 15 years ago versus now, you'd be like, who the hell's that guy? Like I'm very different now than I was 15 years ago. But I didn't just magically wake up one day and be a different person. it was first a very slow crawl and then a little bit of a walk and, very unsteady, like what's going on. And it's a progress, just like you learn anything else. And once you identify there's things to learn, then you get hungry for it. And then you go and find a mentor, you go find a resource, you go find a book, and then you start consuming that. And the next thing you know, you're at a full sprint down this transformation road. But I don't want people to get from our content that you got to do it on your own and you just got to muscle in and do it. You just got to start with a desire to do it and then start finding resources, input from other people, take a little here, take a little there. Be careful about what you consume. There's a lot of crazy sumbitches out there that'll lead you down a bad road. So you got to have a little bit of discernment on, hey, that's a good path or that's not for me or whatever. But I just want to touch on that I don't want people to feel like they have to just magically do it on their own or that it happens quick. It takes a lot of persistence. It takes sticking with it, and it takes help from other people.
Man, that is so true. And I'm like you, man. I'm always fascinated by those very few rare outlying self-starters. And I'm always like, man, what made that individual? Because I'm with you, man. Like I had to get around some people that thought differently before I realized, oh man, this is even available. But those individuals that just do it on their own, it's so weird, man. And I don't know what it is about, their design or their makeup or whatever that just they're able to pull that trigger. But yeah, it's pretty admirable for sure.
That's why they make such awesome stories, because it's a rarity. It's a unique situation. So that's why it's cool to watch and listen to and hear about.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Haven ASG. Looking to buy your first private aircraft or upgrade your current bird? Travis and the team at Haven Aviation Services Group has you covered. From finding the jet of your dreams to selling your old model, our expert brokerage teams handle every detail, connecting you to the right deal for the right aircraft every time. Visit havenasg.com/flyinghigh today for your custom experience to begin. Again, that's havenasg.com/flyinghigh, or just click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show.
When you compare like your internal dialogue from 10 years ago and where you were at versus your internal dialogue now and where you're at now, like how radically different is that, and what was that journey like for you?
It's a lot different. 10 years ago, if you had asked what I'd be doing at 40 years old, I'd say, I'll just be turning wrenches, making, X and living day to day like the rest of my life. And now I'm, a lot more open to learning and wanting to see myself succeed and just go big. If that makes sense. I don't know how to explain it, but it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, man. I liked Omar's reoccurring question of, if life was perfect, what would you do? It reminds me of a question that I got asked many years ago that kind of the same type deal, but the question was, if time and money weren't limiters, what would you be doing? Yeah, that was one of those questions that changed everything for me, because it makes you want to experience that thing, and it makes you want to begin to see time and money differently, and something that can be shifted in your favor so that you can pursue that rather than the prison guard. It becomes the key,
right?
And it's just about your relationship with money, with time. And I did this exercise one time where the exercise was, if money was a person, how would you describe your relationship with that person? And I remember my answer was, money is like that friend that whenever you get together, you have a great time, but they rarely answer the call. Rarely answer the phone. But that revealed a limiting mindset that I had to shift, and reposition my relationship with money, how I viewed it, and how I expected it to operate in my life. But yeah, that internal realm is
it's fun to navigate.
Super interesting, for sure. So if life was perfect, what would you be doing, or are you already doing it?
You first.
I don't think I'd change much. I really like what I'm doing,
Yeah. Dude, that's winning right there,
I
man.
want to keep growing it. I want to see how big this thing can get. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with Chris. The only thing I would change is more of it.
I wouldn't live in Amarillo. Let's just throw that one in there. Would not be.
Does this
here.
weather have anything to do with that?
Yeah, not enough trails around here.
Oh, that's right.
Hey, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good, man. But yeah, it's, as far as, dude, I'm just super fortunate. I'm living the dream that I thought of 15 years ago of how do I get there. And that's honestly what keeps me going, because, me and Omar touched on it in the podcast of there's a lot of shit that goes along with it. And how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Why this? It feels very isolating and lonely a lot of days. And so if I ever catch myself kind of falling below the line where I want to have a little pity party about something going on, I just remind myself, dude, this is exactly what you asked for, and you're blessed to have what you asked for. And so I don't stay there long. I just, hey, this is what we wanted. This is what we're doing. We're changing lives. We're impacting the industry. Let's move. Yeah. And I enjoy it.
Heck yeah. Makes getting up every day better.
Yeah. For
sure. So you used a phrase that I had not heard before, but that I enjoyed in the episode about aggressive patience. I just felt like now would be the perfect time for you to expand upon that definition and maybe give people some examples of what that looks like.
Yeah, so to me...
I also feel like aggressive patience is the only patience that D's allow in their life.
Yeah, that's true. The main thing for me is a lot of success to me is based on decision velocity. Like, you think of something, you got an idea, you got something, you need to just act on it right away and not let it sit, not think about it, not wait, not have a study group about it. You just need to act on it. And so that decision velocity is super important, and that's what I mean by aggressive. Like, I thought one day, hey, I need to start a podcast. I need to share our story. I didn't spend 6 months thinking about how to do it. I called Dub and I said, hey, can you go meet me for lunch? I want to do something. And we went and met for lunch, and the next couple of days we had a podcast going.
Yeah.
Me and Chris were talking about this just this morning on different things I don't want to get into on here. But the fact that you just have to make a decision and move. But just because you make that decision and move, we made this decision to start this podcast and move. And we're working on it every day. We're doing what we can every day. We're chipping away. That doesn't mean we're going to have 1 million followers on social media tomorrow, because it takes time for that to develop and grow. And so if you're just aggressive, you don't have any tolerance for the time it takes for things to mature. So that's where the patience side comes in. So while you're waiting for things to develop, do what you can in the moment. And don't use it as an excuse of, well, it's snowing, we might as well go home and go to bed. Well, instead of going home and going to bed, we busted out the gear and we're making this. We're doing what we can in the moment when we can, and we don't relent, and we just are patient that it's all going to play out in the long run. And it takes time for other people to get on board. It takes time for things to develop. And so just be patient, be persistent, stick with it, but be very aggressive about it. You gotta kick that day's ass everywhere you can, and squeeze every ounce out of that day that you can, and eventually it all works out. It just takes time.
I like that addition of the decision velocity. Is that how you said it? So is that something that you just like? How do you vet an idea before you shift into that expedited processing of it or engagement of it? Is it you're just doing that at a high rate, but you're quick to abort if you realize it was a bad decision, but you're really going to move on most of your ideas, or is there a vetting process prior?
Well, it depends on certain circumstances. Like, if I have this idea that pops into my head that I'm going to go add a extra wing on top of an airplane, like, obviously there's safety involved, there's other things involved. We can't go do that. Like, we might call an engineer and be like, hey, would this be a good idea? So obviously being ridiculous, but there are ideas that pop in that you just know, hey, immediately we can go down this quickly, or this is going to be one that's going to take a lot of collaboration, a lot of time. And the key thing on the decision velocity, whether it's a small little action or whether it's a big, long, drawn-out process that you know is going to take years to get done, the key is not that. It's the fact that you act on something with it. Just because this project's going to take a year, I'm not going to wait 9 months to ask the first question. I'm going to ask the first question in the first 30 seconds. Like, okay, what's step 1 of this? Let's get the ball moving. And then what's step 2? What's step 3? And it just goes back to doing what you can in the moment, in the situation. But the other half of that question about aborting quickly is also important, because if you do get an idea, you start acting on it real quick, And then all of a sudden you realize there's some unintended consequences that go along with this action. So as soon as you run into that, there again, quickly figure out it's worth the consequences or it's not worth the consequences, and you just move on it. The part where everything gets stalled out, and I think where people lose momentum is enormous. And where you lose momentum is when you get into, so Brandon Dawson is the one I heard this from, and I love the way he explains it, is there's pulling and polling. So if you start pulling people into your idea, you're inviting them in and they're going to come along and be along for the ride and they're going to help you move the idea forward, versus going around and polling people like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Do you think this is a good idea? Hey, Chris, do you think this is a good idea? Do you? And it comes from a lack of self-confidence in the concept or the idea or whatever. So instead of me going like, dude, I got the best idea. This is going to be awesome. Let's go. You're going to be like, hell yeah, let's go do that. And now I'm building
excited right now. There's not even a real idea, but I was ready to go.
So it's a matter of pulling people versus polling people. It goes into that same thing. Because what a lot of people, my point of bringing that up, what a lot of people get into is they get insecure about the decision. So instead of acting on it, they start going around and asking, hey, dad, hey, mom, hey, brother, hey, friend. And they don't have your vision. They don't see what you see. They don't understand it from your frame of reference. So you're going to get, you ask 10 people, you're going to get 12 different answers. Yep. And that's where you get hung up. Now you're really conflicted. You were already a little conflicted with yourself. Now you have all these other influences on you going, well, he said that and he said that. And well, Dub's going to be mad now because he told me not to do it. And Chris told me I should do it. So he's going to be mad if I don't do it.
So much self-doubt, you know?
Yeah,
right out the
it
gate.
just creates so much self-doubt. So the only way to beat fear and to beat uncertainty is velocity. You just got to stay ahead of it. So you got to move quick and and you got to have a faster velocity than those things have time to catch up to you. Otherwise, you get stuck behind them.
I like that, man. Is that something that came naturally to you, or is that something you identified and had to implement into how you operate?
I've always been a quick decision maker, not always for my benefit, but I get a harebrained idea, I'm going to chase after it right away. But it did take a long time to steer that into a productive decision making and not doing something stupid. And, over the years, I've always been that way, but over the years and studying and listening to people and all that, I have heard other people talk about it. Other people have brought up the speed with which you make decisions is a big impact on your overall success. Getting into the personality stuff, I think that's why you see a lot of D personalities at the top of the pack on that, is because they're not afraid to make a quick, decisive decision, where some of the other personality types are more prone to committee action and feeling safe, and everyone's good with this. You all good with this decision? And D's like, I don't care, get the hell out of my way, I'm going. Yeah. And they're all needed. It's not one's better than the other. Right. It's just the way people's natural tendencies are. And that's not to say those other personalities can't be successful. It's just an obstacle they have to learn how to work around with that concept in mind.
That's very true. Even jokingly, sometimes in text with you, you'll float something by me and I'm like, let me overthink that for a minute, because I've identified that I am an overthinker. The stupidest part of that, though, was I realized about, 5 or 6 years ago, the majority of the time after I've overthought something, the conclusion I come to is my initial thought.
Your initial
that my
instinct.
Initial thought was right. Yeah, my instinct. And so why am I spending so much time refining things or trying to make things bulletproof when the majority of the time my instinct is right? Like, I should start writing on that some more, But I had to intentionally do that because that's not my personality style. So.
And now you're overanalyzing why you're overanalyzing?
Anyways.
Oh, boy.
Chris, what's your decision making like? Or let me ask you this. What was it naturally, and has it had to evolve or change? Or
I go down some deep rabbit holes sometimes, and kind of what he was talking about is just not that quick decision making where you start getting those doubts in your head. And so I've been really trying to focus on just going with it, Usually you are right, like you were saying. So
it's crazy, right?
I know, but you start looking into it, you can find 10 reasons to do something, and you find one reason not to, and you shut it all down, even though it was you should have went for it,
Yeah,
so.
Right. Meanwhile, the D's are like, I don't see any problem.
What's
No
wrong?
problem here.
What the problem is?
is?
Yeah. What stood out to you, Chris, from that episode overall?
I like to start when he went, to go find Cardone. So I kind of put that in my back pocket. There's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I don't want to talk to this guy like he's some big head honcho over here. You just have that self-doubt. So put that in my pocket. Next time I'm a little worried, I'm like, that guy went and talked to Grant Cardone and drove 4 hours to do it. I can make a quick phone call. This ain't no deal. Or walk over here and get this done. So definitely going to be using that as some motivation. That was pretty incredible. I can't imagine how he was feeling, his heart thumping and all that, so.
The part where he's talking about every time the restaurant door would open, he's like,
oh man,
him.
Right?
Oh, not him. For hours.
I guarantee. A lot of people would have probably got there and the first time the door opened went, yeah, no, not doing this. You know what I mean? Get back in my car and make an excuse why I couldn't do it. So
yeah,
pretty awesome that he stuck around and got that done, and really inspiring actually. So that one's stuck right here for next time I'm getting a little bit.
For sure, man. What's a big standout for you?
The biggest thing for me was how resilient he was on. Yeah, he had that first big home run right out of the gate with getting Grant to do it. But as the story evolved, and that Grant story was really cool and kind of set him up on a high to do it. But it would have very easily been a one and done, and hey, I did it, and now I'm gone. He had the tenacity to do it over and over, and as the story evolved, he got into more that they're not all winners. Like, that's the fun ones to talk about because they came out as a winner. We don't like to talk about the games we lost, But he did get into that a little bit, and to me, being able to take those losses and not let them stop your momentum I think that was really cool that he let us into that a little bit, that, it's not like I'm a perfect track record. I'm going to lose more than I win. But so, yeah, that giving me that little bit of insight into his psychology of that he's not going to just quit because they don't all go perfect. I think that's the real life scenario. Shit doesn't always go perfect. How do you deal with adversity? And do you have the gumption to keep doing it when you take that loss? Do you dust yourself off immediately and get back to work, or do you quit and go home? And
man, you guys watch Ted Lasso by any chance?
Yeah, I love that show.
Oh, bro, you gotta check it out.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It is, one of the best TV shows out there. But I love the whole be a goldfish. So Ted Lasso's a football coach, and one of his players screwed something up, missed a shot or whatever, and he said, hey, you know how long a goldfish's memory is? He's like, no. He's like, 10 seconds, be a goldfish. And man, it's
true.
It's just off of a funny show, but I was like, I put that in my pocket. I was like, man, that's so smart, because if you miss it, acknowledge it. Is there anything I can learn from it? But then, man, you just gotta
don't dwell on it.
Heck no, gotta move on, man. That's a good one.
Don't dwell on it and let it amplify. You start getting told no so often, it's hard to get a yes, because now your attitude going into the next yes is
of course
more of a no. Yeah,
the last two guys said no. This guy's gonna say no.
You're speaking into existence. Your mind's putting into existence. It's hard to sell stuff and do stuff when you're negative.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to close this out?
No.
It just shuts off.
That's how they normally go.
True.
We're
Just
supposed to have an
fades out.
outro.